It doesn't matter what side of the political fence you're on. Sometimes there is information that comes out from someone in a senior position that requires our thought and reflection. And in this case, it's from Donald Trump. And he made a post today on Truth Social that I thought was very important to reflect on. And this is why I'm sharing it. And this is essentially what he shared today. I'm going to go through this in a moment, and I'm going to give you some thoughts about what I think, based on the science, could have happened as an outcome with regards to the pandemic. Now, there are many critics of Donald Trump, and I myself can have criticisms of him. But it's important to recognize strengths and weaknesses and to reflect very carefully on what it means in the context of science. So let's start from the important point here. You have to realize that Donald Trump was the one who created Operation Warp Speed. This was the fast tracking of mRNA technology. Now, there are many arguments about whether or not he had enough information at the time as to why they made such a big step in the science when they could have used other technologies that were better understood. But for whatever reason, he went with that recommendation. And so he has a vested interest in the fact that it is successful. So the very fact that he has raised some questions should be taken quite seriously. My question is why? Why at all? And why now? What is going on? So let's first look at what was said. Here we have Donald J. Trump. This is from Truth Social. It is very important that the drug companies justify the successes of their various COVID drugs. Now, it's interesting that he used drugs and not vaccines, but maybe he was also making reference to some of their COVID drugs like Paxlovid. Many people think they are a miracle and they saved millions of lives. And again, if he has been up to date with the science, he would have realized that first they were told over 14.7 million were saved, and then it was updated. It's now 2.5 million over 4 years. Maybe if we wait another 6 months, it will drop even lower, but that's a different point. So others disagree. And he may be hearing from people like Peter McCullough, who are challenging these numbers. And part of the issue with regards to the disagreement is that if they were so effective, why are excess deaths not down after you had so many deaths in the pandemic? Now, many people will say it's still because COVID is circulating, and that is true. But if COVID is still circulating, where is the effectiveness against transmission? So, whichever way you take it, for those people who don't want to consider the points, there are some questions to be answered. So, with the CDC being ripped apart over this question, I want the answer and I want it now. Just again, if you were not aware, quite recently, there was a challenge from Robert F. Kennedy where he was trying to remove the recently appointed CDC director because she wasn't aligned with where he was going and what he was doing. And then some other senior CDC people resigned and they had a walkout. And there's a lot going on in the background. And that's another story that we'll come to in due course. The point is that it's causing a lot of ruptions. And Donald Trump wants answers, reasonably. I have been shown some information from Pfizer and others that is extraordinary, but they never seem to show these results to the public. Why not? Now, I'm not quite sure what he's talking about there, and I can only presume it's some of the peer-reviewed papers that are showing remarkable outcomes with regards to COVID vaccines. For those who know me, I challenge these points because, as I said, in one of the big studies, I think it was looking at a population level with regards to Denmark, um, it showed remarkable outcomes across the board for all the vaccines, mRNA, AstraZeneca. You'd think to yourself, AstraZeneca, my gosh, that's the one that they're no longer using, isn't it? Anyway, this was showing remarkable results across the board. But I had noticed a red flag. And the red flag was that within a week of taking the vaccines, they found significant benefit for heart failure. For anybody who knows anything about heart failure, I guarantee you there is no physiological basis to say that a vaccine could improve heart failure within a week. So I did a study looking at that and saying they got the baseline wrong. And so this is the kind of thing maybe that they are hearing is so remarkable that it would cause him not to question before now. Anyway, let's continue. They go off to the next hunt. This is the next new vaccine or drug, and let everyone rip themselves apart, including Bobby Kennedy Jr. and the CDC, trying to figure out the success or failure of the drug companies' COVID work. And that's quite reasonable in that they have kind of just left everybody to fight it out. They show me great numbers and results, but they don't seem to be showing them to many others. I want them to show them now to the CDC and the public and clear up this mess. I agree. I would be very interested in what numbers they are showing that are so wonderful because not based on my scientific extrapolation, spike protein autoimmune responses, I think you're going to have a problem. But let's wait and see. What numbers is he talking about here? Here we go. I hope Operation Warp Speed was as brilliant as many say it was. If not, and this is the important bit, if not, we all want to know about it and why. Thank you for your attention to this very important matter. Let me repeat this. I hope Operation Warp Speed was as brilliant as many say it was. If not, we all want to know about it and why. Absolutely important question. This is what I've said from the start. When you have no clear outcomes that you're targeting, you can claim everything is a success. And that was one of the problems with the pandemic, in that the outcomes were not clearly defined as what really was considered success. So they were able to say, oh, it doesn't matter too much about transmission because, yeah, it was just to protect you, but you just mandated it. Infection is still circulating, but it doesn't matter too much. It's circulating everywhere in the world. But when you check out places like Haiti and Papua New Guinea, it's done, and they're only 2.7 and 4.5% vaccinated. Something is just not adding up here. And so when you have these kinds of situations, you need answers. And he's right. What are the answers? What really were these outcomes that were so very important? But here's another question that I am asking. And this is the final part of my thoughts. And these are my thoughts because you have to remember that Operation Warp Speed for Donald Trump was a huge factor in terms of how he believes the pandemic was managed, because he didn't get the credit for it because he lost the election. Here is the interesting thing, and it made me wonder. And Donald, just in case you're listening, this is just my thought. I am not targeting you. I am just thinking. Follow here. When he lost the election, because I think he believed, and he may have been right, that if Operation Warp Speed had come to fruition before the election, it was such a close election that if he could have claimed that his vaccine that he put all this money in was ready, it could have tipped the balance in his favor. So here is an interesting piece of information. And it came out of the House Committee, the 1813 House Judiciary Committee. And it's important to note that this committee it has a chairman, Jim Jordan, and critically, what I had to figure out, because I don't know much about this, I had to figure out if it was partisan. But I can see here the members, they are Republican, they're Democratic, and it seems to therefore be balanced. So it's a broad political viewpoint, okay? And that's the starting point. And the reason I did that is because of what it was addressing in May of 2025. So the link is, why would it be that Donald Trump could flip around with Operation Warp Speed when it's supposed to have been one of his big successes in his first term? Look at this story here. And this came from this committee here. New allegations about timing of Pfizer COVID vaccine passed to House panel. This was in the 15th of May, 2025. And you can go and look at it yourself. You just have to search this out and it will come up in the House committee. But it's all about one particular person, Philip Dormitzer. He was one of the lead people in the Pfizer research on vaccines. Now, what happened is that he allegedly said, based on new allegations, that a former Pfizer scientist has said that he was part of an effort to deliberately slow down the testing, according to a new letter from the House Judiciary Committee. So this is under investigation. The person in question has denied that. He says that he denies that he or anyone at Pfizer tried to delay the vaccine, and has said that his comments to colleagues at his new job, GSK, have been misinterpreted. And so this is now still, I think, under investigation to clarify what exactly was done. So just so that you understand the context. If I remember rightly, I'm trying to remember now the dates in terms of the election. The essence of it is the vaccine success was not announced until after the election. If it had been announced before the election, there is a chance that it could have swung the votes in favor of Donald Trump because he would have been able to claim the success of Operation Warp Speed. The fact that it was delayed until after the election then took that credibility away and could have shifted slightly the population to the Democratic side, which is why Biden could have won. If that was the case, if it was a strategy that they chose to delay this outcome until after the election, that could be a problem. And that could explain, in my mind, why we see a transition in terms of what he's thinking. As I said here, is that when he says he has been told Operation Warp Speed was as brilliant as many say it was. Because in effect, if he had gotten Operation Warp Speed, it could have swung the election his way. But now, for the first time, he is asking, if not, we want to know about it and why. Now, there are many critics of Donald Trump, especially with how he handled the pandemic in terms of the early phases of it and the rollout of various stuff. That's a whole different point. But I'm going to end here on a thought. And so, Donald, if you're listening, this is my thought. With all the criticisms that he's had, there is one thing that I think if he had won the election, he would not have done. I don't think it's in his nature for him to have pushed vaccine mandates. That's very important. Because I tell you what, when you now look at the science and you now look at the implications of population level mass vaccination, as Gert had pointed out, shifting the immune response and seemingly, I will say, driving variants, what would have happened if he had won and he didn't institute vaccine mandates? For one, this was followed by the rest of the world. So the rest of the world would have followed suit and not done the same. One. Secondly, what they would have found is that if they targeted the high risk and allowed the virus to spread among the low risk, and he was already a subscriber to early treatment options, I suspect they would have stopped the pandemic very quickly. What we have now is a bit of a disaster. Ongoing circulation of the virus in populations that are already immune primed by vaccination and recurring infection, and an inability to get to herd immunity, in my mind, is possibly the worst outcome you could have ever hoped for. That's my view. And so the only point I would say is this: as many of the things that he may have gotten wrong in the first phase of the pandemic, he may just have gotten the mandates right, and he could have potentially gotten the outcomes right. It's just the way it is. We don't know. It's just my thought. But one thing is for certain: hopefully now, if he is pushing this bear, we will get closer to the answers that we actually need to understand what in the world happened. Again, remember to like, remember to subscribe, and put a comment. It helps the algorithm. And please remember to share this. And just in case you do know him, maybe you should send this video. Just the end part, of course, not the first part. Have a good evening.